Orion? Canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth at his season? Or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons? Knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth?
Alright guys, well, we're going to start. It's 11:15 Eastern Standard Time, or Eastern Daylight Time, and we're going to start with the presentation of the Secret of Secrets. And to begin with, there needs to be an understanding laid down that what we see in this world and what we view through the senses can be altered, and it can be twisted. It can be twisted, and such is the case with our belief systems and our belief structures, which are given and handed down to us through religion and tradition. And to give you an illustration of this, allow me to stand up. Forgive me as I stand up. I'm going to give you an illustration of how you can believe one thing and the exact opposite be true, be the case. Case in point is my hands. My hands are ultimately empty, as you can see. Okay? But with a snap of the fingers and a shake of the hand, they are not. So you see, your perceptions dictate your reality. And if your perceptions can be persuaded, then so can your reality. That's kind of the premise of what we're going to talk about here today. And to begin with, I'm going to read just a very short portion, or not even a portion, a short paragraph from the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Atlantean. And we're going to find what we're going to read in the 15th tablet. Keeping in mind that these are the words of Thoth, not myself, but I will read it verbatim. Now ye assemble, my children, waiting to hear the secret of secrets, which shall give ye power to unfold the God-man, give ye the way to eternal life. Plainly shall I speak of the unveiled mysteries. No dark sayings shall I give unto thee. Open thine ears now, my children, hear and obey the words that I give. For I shall speak of the fetters of darkness, which bind ye in chains. I shall speak of the fetters of darkness, which bind ye in chains. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to try to shed some light on these fetters of darkness. Now, just as light would be indicative of enlightenment, darkness holds the same value with respects to ignorance. If you're ignorant of something, then it's to be said that you're in the dark on that. And so we're going to try to shed some light on this darkness that might be pervading some of our perceptions. And the first place we need to look at, or actually, before we even start there, before we even start into that, now would be the time for me to explain some things to you. As you know, Murphy's Law dictates that what can go wrong will. And for weeks now I've had this plan, and everything's been quiet. And just yesterday, they pulled in some heavy equipment at my neighbor's house, and they're doing some land clearing and stuff today, which has my dogs, especially my youngest dog, Pepper, has her beside herself. So there may be times you're going to hear barking and things of that nature. You might hear bumps and stuff like that from them doing the work and everything, but we'll get through it. Okay, we'll get through it. So, and I ask you to forgive me for that. My dog Pepper, she's very protective and things like that. She was abused. That's how we got her, and so she has some psychological deficits and stuff like that. So, you know, I have to deal with that just as she has to deal with it. Because I, you know, as much as I think I own her, she owns me just as much, you know. So, with that, I also want to, that being said, I want to also express to you that there are some links on the page there. One link is to the website where you can join, and I wish that you would. The website is in its nascency right now, but join there so we can communicate and not having to rely on Facebook all the time. We can do some emails and stuff like that. Also at the website, you'll get, if you become a site member, you'll get some PDF files that you can download that are, you know, range in scope from Hinduism to whatever. And I know I just said a religion there, but bear with me on that. Hinduism, Buddhism, stuff like that. Astrology. There's all kinds of PDFs that you can peruse there at the site. And also, at the site you can find my writings. I have 2 writings right now. One is on the vision of Ezekiel, and shining some light on that, and the other one is the pentagram and the mathematics behind that, stuff like that. So I want to begin by quoting some things, and we're going to go through and look at some stories. And I want you all to know that whether it's Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Sufism, Islam, you know, Judaism, whatever it may be. All religions, and I think I just named about 7 of them, are likened unto the colors of the rainbow. And this is what I mean by that. The colors of the rainbow are broke down into 7 different colors. And those colors are dictated by the fractals of light and vibration and frequency. The same can be said of the major religions of the world. Because just as the rainbow is just a breakdown of the one true light, which is the sun, so are the major religions of the world. And we like to get tied up in our differences so much that we forget the higher light. So just to know that. So I'm not against or for any particular religion. I myself don't ascribe to one per se. But now, for the purposes of this discussion today, I'm going to be taking almost everything what I say and applying it to a grand scale. But I'm going to take stories out of the Bible. And the reason I'm doing that is because that's the demographic and geographical location that I live in. So that's what I know. So I can't explain to you exactly everything of the Hindu aspects and how it ties in, even though it does. So does with Islam and Judaism. But what I do know is what I need to stick with, and that's what I'm going to do. But we're going to take a journey, and we're going to look at a period of history. Actually, we're going to look at a period of time, a 9,600 year period of time. Some of it, and most of it, will be historical. A portion of it will be now, and we're also going to look into the future. To begin, I need to say something from, and we'll find it in the book of Peter, the first Peter, where it said in there, a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. And I got to thinking about that, and I know that there's a lot of different breakdowns depending on who you talk to and, you know, what they believe in and things like that. And on the word belief, before we go further from that, belief, to me, is only an avenue to be deceived, as I showed you with the coin. You believed that my hands were empty until you seen the coin. Now, one of two things happened. Either I can produce money out of thin air, which if that was the case, there wouldn't be a donate link there in the bottom, and I wouldn't be doing this here. Or I was able to change your perception or hide something from your perception until I wanted to reveal it. And that relies on beliefs. So we believe things a lot that sometimes there are no basis for us to believe. Now you can either believe or you can know some things. And I think ultimately people, especially now today, they would rather know something than to believe in something. Because at one time, we each believed in the Tooth Fairy, the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus. And we found those things to be not what they seemed, not what they appeared, not what they were professed to be. That's the danger of belief. So I want to look at this. A day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. Now what does that mean? Now if you have 1,000 years is as a day is as 1,000 years. If a day is as 1,000 years, one day is 24 hours. So we would take 24 and multiply that by 1,000, and we'd get 24,000 years. Which actually, in Hinduism, is a yuga cycle. But we're not going there. But it also says the other pole. The other pole of that statement is that 1,000 years is as a day. So we want to look at not the pole statements, but we want to look at the underlying what's connecting them. Of course, time is connecting them. But if a day is as 1,000 years and 1,000 years is as a day, then we went from multiplication, now we must divide. And if we divide 24,000 by 1,000, we come up with 2,400 or 2,400. Which is interesting, because we're going to look heavily into astrology. And if you know anything about astrology, then you know that there are 12 signs of the zodiac, and of course 12 houses, because one sign to each house. And if you take 12 and you multiply that by 2,400, you come up with the sum of 28,800, which, interestingly enough, is the time frame of what's called the Great Year. Now the Great Year, 28,000 year period, the Great Year is when, let's look at it this way, we are coming up on March 21st, which Aries rules. You know, that's the beginning of the true beginning of the year. March 21st, Aries. So if we take that and we look at Aries, and then we go from Aries all the way around in the circle. Let me show you this right here. We go from Aries, which is right here, and come all the way around this circle to Pisces. That's 12 signs. And each sign, and we'll get into this, each sign is a span of 2,400 years, which is 28,000 years. So if we start in Aries and go 28,000 years, we were going to come back full circle to where we began. That's the Great Year. That's the Great Year and the completion of the procession of the equinoxes. Okay? Now, the procession of the equinoxes. That's where we're really getting at today. Or they're called ages, or the epochs. The procession of the equinoxes goes like this. For a time, you'll be in Aries. For another time, and then after that 2,400 year cycle, the equinox will process as a parade. You know, the floats process down the street, or a parade. That's what's happening here. These signs and these houses are parading through the sky. That's why it's called the procession of the equinoxes. Now we'll get into that, and I hope I didn't confuse you too much. And I'm trying not to jump ahead of myself. But we need to understand this statement that a day is as 1,000 years and 1,000 years is as a day. If we just stuck with a day is as 1,000 years, if that's all they put in there, then we're just dealing with 24,000 years. but they came back and they also said that 1,000 years is a day. So that's how we come up with the 2,400-year cycle there. Now, we're going to take a trip through history, and we're going to look through the Bible. Okay? Now, I'm not preaching and all that stuff, but I'm just giving you a correspondence, a correlation to what's actually going on and what you've been told. If you are a believer type of person, you've been told some things, but I'm going to show you what the secret of the secret is behind that, what you've been told, and why you've been told it. Let's look at some questions real quick. I'm going to really just throw these out there. Why is it that Aaron built a golden calf? Why was it that John the Baptist said, "Behold the Lamb of God"? Why was it that Jesus was called the fisher of men? And we're going to answer those questions. And we're not going to answer them with our beliefs and our emotions. We're going to answer them logically and empirically. Okay? So that we cannot believe something, we can know it. Now, we're going to start our story. And I'm going to try to paint a picture in your mind. And before I do that, I want to say this. You see maybe a donate link down there at the bottom of the screen. And that's not just for me to pocket money. You also see the link to my book, which is, if you get the Kindle version or the electronic version, it's 99 cents. So, you know, it's not like I'm trying to make a killing on that. I'm just trying to spread something, some knowledge. But at any rate, that donation link there, if you click that, you can donate whatever you want, or you don't have to donate. Don't worry about it. But if you do, because I'm providing this for free, except through donations, what I would like to have is, in time, maybe for the next time that we meet, is have an easel, whether a dry erase easel, something I can stand up, and I can, draw some things instead of just having this piece of paper here, dry erase easel or one of those paper easels, but big, So that's what the donation link is all about. At any rate, we're going to take a journey, and we're going to journey through history. We're going to journey through a 9,600-year period of time. As I said, most of it is history. Some of it is current. And then we're also going to look into the future. And I'll show you how you can do that. And if you're a Bible believer, or if you know the Bible, I'm not against the Bible. But I just know that there are some things in there that aren't being expressed properly. In today, anyway. It used to be that they were, but not so much anymore. We're not going to get into that. So what we're going to look at today is we're going to start our journey. We're going to look at this block of time right here. From Taurus to Aries to Pisces, which is where we're at right now. And then we're even going to look into the future to Aquarius. Now, let's start our story. We're going to start our story in Egypt. Around the time of the killing of the firstborn, when Moses went to Pharaoh, and Moses said, "Let my people go." And Moses told his people, the Israelites, he said to them, "Take the blood of a lamb, slay it, take the blood, put it on the doorpost and the lintel," or the doorposts and the lintel. And then, of course, the story goes, when the death angel comes, he'll pass over. Okay. And the reason we have that story is because that was a transitional period right there. If you understand anything about astrology, you know that the houses of astrology have cusps, which is the transitional period where the sign is not completely in the new house, but it's not completely out of the old house. And at that time, when the precession of the equinoxes was changing from one sign to another, Moses was inclined. The story in the Bible is, God talked to Moses, things like that. But Moses knew and understood what was happening. And so he does this and and his people follow him in that. And so they're going to pick up the story. They go through all that trouble with Egypt. They leave Egypt. Pharaoh chases them until they come to the Red Sea. Of course, you know the story. The Red Sea parts, they cross over. Then it closes back up, and the Egyptians drown and die. After they cross over, Moses is told, go up on mountain, Mount Sinai, where he gets the 10 Commandments, which we're not going to get into that, but that's a whole other discussion, where he gets the 10 Commandments. Now, while Moses is up there on the mountain, he leaves his brother Aaron, which is the high priest, sort of more or less in charge. Now I can see Aaron. Let me paint this picture for you. I can see Aaron in the shade of the mountain, waiting on his brother to come back down. And I can see him kind of, leaned on his elbows there on the ground with his legs and feet spread out, his feet crossed at the end. But the people, the Israelites, they were getting worried. And they talked among themselves and said, well, this Moses, he's died up there. And so they come to Aaron, which is the second in charge, so to speak. And I can see him coming up to him. They picked one guy out of the whole lot to go up and talk to Aaron. And I can see this guy come over to Aaron as he's sprawled out on the ground, and he kind of nudges him at his feet there. And the people say this. They say to Aaron, they say, up, make us gods. Because man has an insufferable need to have a focal point for their worship. So the people come to Aaron, they say, up, make us gods. So Aaron gets up, and he says, give me all your gold jewelry, your earrings and everything. Bless you. And what does Aaron make, if you know the story? What does Aaron make? Keeping in mind that Moses understands what's going on. Moses is in communion, if you will, with the Creator or with God. Moses understands. But see, Moses is the only one that understands. So what does Aaron make? Aaron makes a golden calf. And you read that story and you might think, well, what's the significance of that? Okay, big deal. He made a golden calf. They were idol worshippers. Well, a lot of people running around today talk about this and that, and they got crosses in their house and all that stuff. And I've got stuff around my neck and everything, but you know how it is. I'm not downing anybody for what they do. But at any rate, the reason that Aaron made a golden calf was because that was the only thing Aaron knew. That's all he knew. All he knew was that every equinoctial morning, March 21st, that sun rose. And right before that sun rose in the southeastern sky, there was a constellation in the sky. And that constellation in the sky for 2,400 years was Taurus, the golden calf. I don't know if you can read that. For 2,400 years. So that's all he knew. That's all his ancestors knew, was the golden calf. So that's all he knew to build, because that was the house that he was in. What he didn't know is what Moses knew, that there was a transitional period. And that's why they were in the wilderness. That's why, after they cross the river, and the sea, and Moses is up on Mount Sinai, and that's why Moses, let me say this real quick, that's why Moses was so enraged when he came down and he smashed the tablets, the story goes. Because Moses knew what was happening. They were moving from one equinoctial house into another. And so it enraged him and perhaps he spoke with his brother about this, and he just couldn't see it. And perhaps you speak to people about things, but make sure you know what you're speaking about. Perhaps I'll speak to people and they still won't understand it, and that does happen all the time. The thing there is, don't break the tablets just because somebody doesn't understand. But anyway, we have that time frame Now you say, well, can you prove that? Well, bear with me and I will. And so they come across the river Jordan. I'm sorry, across the Red Sea. Aaron builds the golden calf because that's all Aaron knows. Moses comes down, destroys it. We're about in this period right here at the cusp of the house. But from that time on, and especially after the crossing of the river Jordan, Caleb and those guys, for 2,400 years we have, this is the Old Testament period right here, which is in, they moved out of the house of Taurus and the golden calf, and they moved into the house of the blood of the lamb, or the ram, Aries. Aries is the next sign in the procession of the equinoxes. And that's why, still to this day, the Orthodox Jews have what's called the shofar, the ram's horn, and they still to this day blow that ram's horn. That's why in the wilderness they had the tabernacle, and they had the common altar outside, and they would talk about putting the blood on the horns of the altar. And if you see depictions of that in pictures and stuff, you'll usually see like steer horns, bull horns, but they weren't bull horns. They were ram's horns, because that was the sign that they were under, because they were in a new house. And for that 2,400 year cycle, the sun rose on the equinoctial morning for 2,400 years in the house of Aries. Now that's a 4,800 year cycle of time right there that we just went through. And I told you I'll try to make this quick and painless as possible. But your entire Old Testament is for the most part dealing with the house of Aries. And the only glimpse that we have of the house of Taurus toward the end there is the fact that Aaron built a golden calf. You say, why was it a golden calf? Why wouldn't a bull if it's Taurus? Well, because they were in the wilderness, and that's probably all the gold they had to build with. That's all they had to make was a calf. Plus, it was easier to carry around because they were in the wilderness. Excuse me. At any rate, we come through the house of Taurus. We come through the house of Aries. And we're at the end of the house of Aries, another transitional period coming up. We find in this transitional period again a man in the wilderness, a wild man, eating locust and honey. And I can see him right now. His name's John the Baptist in the Bible. Now that ain't his real name, but anyway, we'll go with it. And I see this man in the wilderness. It says he's eating locust and honey. You know, his clothes, his tunic's all ratted. He's got long, unruly hair. His beard's all knotted in a mess. And he's got this comb of honey right here. And probably honey just dripping down. I can see, he's one of my favorite characters, you know. And I can see that honey dripping down. Probably some bees still swarming around. And he's got a handful of locusts, and he's just dipping the locusts in that honey and just eating it. Eating locusts and honey. And this is what he says. Listen to what he says here. He sees Jesus, or Yeshua, far off. And Jesus is 30 years old now. And he says this. He says, behold the Lamb of God to take away sin of the world. Why did John say that? Because that's all John knew. Just as only thing Aaron knew was that 2,400 year cycle of Taurus and the bull. All John knew was that 2,400 year cycle of Aries and the ram. That's all he knew. Here comes my puppy dog. Okay. That's all he knew. But then, as we get through that part, and Jesus actually starts his ministry there, Yeshua starts his ministry, his earthly ministry, he goes to find disciples, you know, the followers, you know, people to help him. Give me one moment, please. I told you this would happen. Pepper, I love you, but you've got to get down, baby. Do you want to go outside? Do you want to go outside? Okay, let's go outside. Give me one moment, please. Pardon me. Come, baby. Come. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Go outside. Okay, all right, I'm back. Okay, so the only thing John knew was the ram, you know, the lamb. But Jesus says, you know, he comes over here and he tells his couple of his followers there, from some of the first, and this, listen to what he says to them. He says, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Another instance, his disciples come to him and say, "Lord, they're asking for tax money." The Roman tax collectors asking for tax money. And listen, and remember what Jesus says to him. He says, "Cast in hook and pull up the first fish you catch, and inside the mouth of that fish you'll find the tribute money." And they did. And if those two illustrations aren't enough, think about this. He's got like 5,000 people on the mountainside. He's talking to them. Okay? He's discussing with them. Much like Jiddu Krishnamurti does, if you look at his stuff. He talks to people. He's not preaching at them. He's discussing with them. And I can see him doing that. More than I can see him telling people they're going to go to hell. But at any rate. So he's doing that. And the people are hungry. I told you the dogs would start barking and stuff. But the people are hungry. And what does he feed the people with? Yeah, 5 loaves of bread. But what meat did he give them? 2 fish. 2 fish. Now, what is 2 fish a symbol of? Pisces. That's right, 2 fish. And so, during the time of Jesus' ministry, we're in the house of Pisces. 2 fish. Now, we're still within the house of Pisces, the 2 fish. As a matter of fact, we are 3 degrees and 19 feet still within the house of Pisces, astrologically speaking. And so, we won't see the transition from Pisces to the next sign in our lifetime, nor will our children. Because there's still, and I've done the math, there's still approximately 463 years left in this sign. And I know that 2017 and 463 don't match up to 2400. I understand that. But now I need you to understand this. You live under a Julian calendar system. Okay? And that Julian calendar system, first of all, starts its year in January, which is not the true start of the year. The true start of the year is coming up March 21st. Secondly, as there are 30 degrees in each sign, 12 signs, and 12 times 30 is 360, which is a perfect circle, and God builds in circles, and I'll prove that in a moment. Our year is 365 days. Now, why is that? Because our months are 30 and 31 stacked, and then we've got that 28-day thing in February, and the leap years, and then you've got to take into consideration, and I'm building to something here, and then you've got to take into consideration we spring forward and fall back in time. Now, you could change the clock all you want in your house or on your arm, but that doesn't make a hill of beans. Just because you change the time, don't change the time. You know. So what I'm getting at here is our entire, we have been thrown into a time distortion. Just like that old Chicago song, does anybody really know what time it is? And the answer is an emphatical no. So when you go to try to disprove what I just said about the 2400-year cycles, and it's already 2017, and I've just said that we've got about 463 years left to go, keep in mind that you're in a time distortion right now. And there's, you know, my thesis for that. Now, so we're approximately, we have 463 years left in this sign, which is, or this house, which is Pisces. And still to this day, though, just as Aaron was looking back to the bull in Taurus, just as John the Baptist was looking back toward the lamb, and the ram, and the blood, and all that, we're still stuck in that modality ourselves. Because if you go to any church in America and you go and you grab a hymnal and you flip through a page, it won't be long till you'll find a song talking about the blood. And we're not even in that house anymore. We're in the house of the fisher of men. Now, what does that have to do with anything? The fisher of men. Well, you know, in astrology, you've got some books here. I'll get to that in a minute. But here it is. Pisces is the feet. Because from Pisces, then it starts all back over in Aries. So Pisces is the end. Pisces is the feet. Jesus walked with feet of peace. That's the trick right there. But then I told you also, so that's where we're at right now. And I didn't mean to spend that much time on that, but that's where we're at right now. We're in the house of Pisces. What does that mean? That means, and you can check me out on it, download the software Stellarium and plug it in there, okay? And then go right now today, go and plug it in for March 21st. And at March 21st, the vernal equinox, right before the sun rises in the sky, you'll see a constellation in the sky. And that constellation is Pisces. And it will be for the next 463 years, approximately. And it has been for the past 2,000 some odd years, approximately. Just as the same is true for Aries, for Taurus. And we're going somewhere else. We won't see it. But Yeshua, or Jesus, spoke of it, gave us a glimpse into the future. And we see it, and we don't understand it. But I'm going to drop it on you. Of course, you know the old song by Fifth Element? I don't remember. I think it was. Yeah. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Now, they wrote that back in, 60s and 70s? And they were right. But that dawning has taken a lot longer than what we thought it would. Because, as I said, it'll still be another 463 years before we see that. But they sung that song. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And the next sign that we're going to come up to is Aquarius, because let me explain this right here. As the earth rotates on its axis counterclockwise, the earth orbits the sun counterclockwise. This thing turns counterclockwise. Now, at any rate, we're going into Aquarius. Now, how can I prove that to you? Toward the end of Yeshua's ministry, he said to his disciples came to him and they said, Lord, where will we provide for the Last Supper? Now let's understand what the Last Supper is. The Last Supper is the last section of 2,400 years. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, that was my fault. The Last Supper is the last morning, that last equinoctial morning that the sun will rise in the house of Pisces. That's the Last Supper. That's what's indicated there. And they come to him and they say, Lord, well, where will we provide for the Last Supper? And listen to what he says to him. He says, you go into the city and you'll see a man carrying a pitcher of water. Now we're going to stop right there for a second. Now you search out all your history books, cultural books. In that region, at that time, in that culture, men did not carry water. Jesus never met a man at the well. It was always a woman he met at the well. The only man he met at the water was the man that he met at the pool of Bethesda, where he healed him. He said, because he said to him, will thou be made whole? But he always met a woman at the well, because women carry water. Now you might think that I'm being sexist right here, but I'm not. Women carry water because that's the natural order of things. What do I mean by that? Am I being sexist again? No, I'm not being sexist. Women carry water because each and every one of us that were born, when we were born, right before we shot out of there, our mother's water broke. Okay? And we came through that water. And that's why it should be so strange yet so obvious that here we have a man carrying water. But I just want to make sure that you understand, and I'm not being sexist, this is much higher than what we're thinking about right now. if you're thinking I'm being sexist, but I'm not. But anyway, we have here that Jesus says to his disciples, he said, go into the city, and you'll find a man carrying a pitcher of water. And listen to what he says. And you follow that man into his house, the house of Aquarius. Now, it's right there in your, right there in your Bible. But that's what we're dealing with. This thing, this Bible thing, it's an astrological treatise. Just like when Job, you know, Job, man, he lost his livestock, lost his children, his wife walked out on him, his friends berated him, and then finally Job gets a little bit mad and he says, God, why you let this happen to me? And then this is what God, the creator, whatever you want to call it, said to him. He said, where were you when I created Pleiades? That's a star system. Where were you when I loosed the bands of Orion? That's a constellation. Where were you when I created the Mazzaroth, which is the word zodiac translated? Where were you when I did all these things? Answer me if thou knowest. So what I'm getting at right there is when Job went accusatory toward God, God used the constellations and the zodiac to defend his honor, so to speak. But then if you read in Genesis, you know, all they put in there was he created stars also. And that's why you got to learn to read between the lines. And that's all this is. That's all this is thing. Is I'm just reading between the lines. You know, taking all the fanaticism out of it. Taking all the belief out of it. And looking at it empirically. With an empirical view. So we have all this being said here that I've said. And all I'm trying to do is show you historically and empirically what is transpiring. How we had Aaron building the golden calf. Because Aaron didn't know what Moses knew, that we were transitioning into Aries, the lamb. And that's why still to this day people sing about the blood of the lamb. But we're up here in this house, the fisher of men. And then he told us where we were going, into the house of Aquarius. And I invite you to check me out on it. Download that Stellarium thing and check me out on it. And if I'm wrong, then let me know I'm wrong. Now, let's get to the contest portion of this. Let's get to the contest portion of this. I want to show you some things I have here. This is, whoa. Okay, this is what the contest is for. It's for a candle holder or a mirror, which I do acid etching, and that's pentagram. And like I said, if you go to my website, you can see the whole treatise on the pentagram there. Okay, it's not evil, it's not wicked, da 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 da. But anyway, you can see that. Okay, and this is the one that's up for the contest. Okay, now I'm just going to show you a couple of my other works. Here is the hexagram, or some of you might know that as the Star of David. Here is what's called the unicursal hexagram, and the unicursal hexagram is big in the world of Thelema. Okay, and all that is a hexagram that you draw without lifting the pen off the paper, which you can't do with the other hexagram like that. And then here is the tree of life, the Kabbalistic tree of life, which I've etched into the mirror there. But once again, let me reiterate that this is what the contest is for. This is my first etching ever, and that's what the contest is for. Now, here's some little bit of information you need to know about the contest. Here's the question I want to know. I want to know this: where is it? And I'm going to boil it down for you, make it real easy. Where is it in the New Testament? Where is it in the book of Matthew that Jesus himself speaks of and elucidates toward the chakra system, and more specifically the sixth chakra, the Anga chakra, or the third eye? It's in there. Can you find it? And if you can, then email me at, I'll tell you what, go to the website there, and you will find my email address right there. It says info@Eclectic Mysticism, and you can email it right there. And if there's more than one winner, then we'll have to have a draw bag type of thing, you know, a draw of the hat type thing. But there's that in a nutshell, you know, and that's what I wanted to share with you today, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I didn't confuse you more. If I did, you know, email me, and we'll go to it from, you know, we'll get at it from there. And subscribe to my Facebook page here and stuff like that. And let's see, that's about it, guys. I mean, that's it. Peace, namaste, love, peace, goodwill, whatever you need to hear from me to let you know that I see you. Later.